Hi,
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Oh, yes, my friends. Once again, it is indeed time to get our talk on. It's Morning Talk with me, your host, J. Stan McCauley, along with the champions of talk. This morning in Studio 1A, special edition, we have returning as we continue our series, Mr. Christopher Dukes. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Morning, Stan. How are you?
I'm doing exceedingly well. How was your weekend?
My weekend was absolutely amazing. It was hot, sweaty. I got to watch my son play in several all-star baseball games, Little League baseball games, and got to spend some time doing some special family arrangements for a very special family occasion that's coming up next month.
All right. Now, for those that aren't familiar with the series, you need to go back and watch the first 2 parts of our 4-part series with Chris here. But for some, they're tuning in for the first time and haven't had a chance to watch it. Why is the weekend spending time watching your son play baseball so important?
Well, it's critical for a number of reasons. Primarily, there's a book that I read many years ago called All Pro Dad, and I mentioned it in one of the series before. And it's key that as parents that we make monuments for children, not just moments and memories. And being there for my son to be able to root him on is just, it's priceless. And I think it's for both of us. And I can see us both growing through the process. Why it's more pertinent to this conversation is for many years I was restricted from seeing my son in that capacity. And so I'm enjoying and relishing in this opportunity, and the chokehold, as we talking about on me being a father, the chokehold that's put on fatherhood has been eased, I will say, at the moment. And so I'll give you one key other thing. Afterwards, I was able to bring my son to my home, something I was not able to do for over 6 years. Actually, bring him to my home after the game. He was able to take a shower. And after he took the shower, he came down and was just hanging out on the sofa. And I looked at his feet and I said, "Boy, you got some big feet." And I just realized that was the first time, my son is 10 years old. It's the first time I seen his feet, bare feet, since he was 4 years old.
Wow.
You think about the simple things that we take for granted with our children and watching them grow and so forth. But again, I don't say that from a place of anger or resentment or so forth. I count it all joy, and I'm glad that I do have the moments now. But again, I want to make sure that moving forward, no mother, no father goes 6 years without seeing their children's feet.
The 9th of the 10 commandments, thou shalt not bear false witness. It's a horrible crime. It's just, it's horrible.
Yes.
And of the things that other people can do to one another, other than, of course, murdering somebody, false witness would be like the worst thing you can do. Because you impeach a person's character.
Yes, sir.
And the thing that makes it so bad is that you know that that's what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And you are in the process of recovering.
Yes, sir. Still. And as we talk about the chokehold has lifelong scars as well too. So the healing will always continue because you'll always have triggers to remind you of when you were oppressed to that degree, when you felt like you could not breathe. But you'll also gain the appreciation on the positive side of it is the fact that you are able to breathe, that you did persevere. And as, again, scripture and music tells us in terms of go tell it on the mountain, go tell the good news. We have to become better at telling the contemporary good news. You know, we keep making it seem like for those of us who are believers and we believe that, one, not only that Jesus Christ was born, that he died for our sins and that he was resurrected and that he came to save. All those things that we preach that we believe in, we need to continue to tell good news that we don't serve a God of yesterday. This is what I said at Faith Congregational. We don't serve a God of just today. We serve the God for tomorrow also. And we need to do a better job as a community. Even if you're a non-believer, you have to tell about good news that is happening. And we don't. We spend too much time talking about yesterday, the old news and so forth. They are, those who are believers, I would say, God is not done in making miracles. There are miracles happening right down the street right now, Hartford Hospital, right? Meanwhile, right over here on Lafayette Street, there are injustices happening over here. There's evil over here. So just in this short distance, we're in between both. Right? And so the issue is being a lifeline to letting folks know and spreading joy and hope and love. And we don't always have to share bad news, which is why, and what we're getting into, American Justice Project, our mission is to end the chokehold, not just here in Hartford, not just here in Connecticut, across this country. Our mission is to end the chokehold, and the vehicle that we're using to do that is Coach. We are looking at forming a nationwide coalition of individuals against the chokehold. So Coach, broken down, is Coalition Organized Against Chokeholds. That is the vehicle for us to accomplish the mission of ending the chokehold.
Coalition Organized
Against chokeholds.
Chokeholds. All right. And chokeholds are, this is a methodology that's used by individuals who are that seek to oppress and control you, I guess one could say. I wouldn't necessarily say in power, because I guess you can you can really be, you know, it's it just, I don't know.
That's right. It's not the physical chokehold that folks are accustomed to think, oh, police put someone in the chokehold. No, it's not that. This is the tactic. Well, it starts with a theory or a thought process that everything an individual does is from a place of them being a thug. So everything is thuggish. So if you put this lens over everyone who is accused of a crime, then they must be a thug because they got accused along. There are 16 elements that we have identified at American Justice Project to help us identify the severity of the chokehold that's applied. So later on in our conversation, I want to talk to you about an individual who, on our assessment, we know has suffered still suffering a 12-point chokehold. I myself experienced a 15-point chokehold. Another individual I talked about previously, Gordon Cole Jr., suffered a 15-point chokehold. A national story like the Central Park Five that a lot of folks will know about, the 5 teens who were wrongfully convicted of the rape and assault and beating of a jogger in Central Park back in 89, I think it was. It was back in the 80s. I'll leave it at that rather than put a false date on it. Those individuals were wrongfully incarcerated for many years, and it wasn't good old-fashioned law enforcement work that freed them. No, it was the actual perpetrator confessing that he did it that freed 5 teens who had absolutely nothing to do with that heinous crime that took place in Central Park. Those individuals, based on our analysis, suffered a 14-point chokehold. So again, our goal is to, when we start talking about this sort of newer terminology, we have found more success doing it this way versus calling out racial discrimination, gender bias, whatever has happened, because those have closed doors immediately. The moment you mention race, boosh, sometimes people get deaf. They don't want to hear anything that you say. They won't bring anything forward. But thank goodness to Paul Butler, who wrote the book Chokehold, which was Policing Black Men in America. Thank goodness that he wrote that, because it gave us the ability to learn from it, identify 16 elements, and then use this as applied research to free individuals. So again, the chokehold itself are the tactics that the officials use to coerce accused individuals into forced or false confessions, plea bargains, and other harm. So this is not just something that law enforcement use. School principals can use this. Social workers can use this. Landlords can use this. Employers can use the chokehold to get at a certain agenda item that harms an individual.
So more the tool than the necessarily the motive behind why the person's using the tool. I mean, we can identify what you are doing.
Yes.
Why you're doing it, I guess, is secondary.
Correct.
I was thinking as you were, talking a little earlier. This issue is actually this is actually how I met you.
Yes.
Around this issue.
Correct.
And all the time that I have known you, as a result of the issue.
Yes.
But I to this day, I know that there's, human nature dictates that there's a level of upsetness.
Yes.
But I've never really seen. I've never sensed or got from you this like runaway anger, wrath. This, it's just
right.
How do I bring attention to this injustice so that others don't go through it?
Correct.
That's always what I've gotten, and that, along with your faith, has caused a monumental victory that that's lost, I'm sure, on some, but it's incredible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
An incredible victory.
There's a sermon that I listened to by Reverend Jerry D. Black out of Beulah Missionary Baptist Church. And I have a cousin who attends there. And she, in the midst of the storm, provided it to me. And it helped me. It has been the foundation, the go-to sermon that has helped explain what I was going through. And the title of the sermon is There is a Process Involved. And this pastor takes us back into the Old Testament to review Job. And it talks about, when thou hast tested me, I shall come forth as gold. And I did use that as a standard. Throughout this 6-year process that I've been through, I've been offered plea bargains. I've been offered deals or stipulated agreements in all of the arenas, and I rejected every single one of them. And why? It's because none of them looked like gold. None of them. And again, I'm glad, Stan, that you say that, because I aim to live a life where I don't allow myself to become consumed with anger. Yeah, and I learn not to avoid processing that anger, because that in itself can turn a person into a pressure cooker, and they can explode. We have examples of that almost every day in our life. Sometimes people explode, and there's no rational reason otherwise. Well, they were under a lot of pressure, and folks know it. So what I hope at the end of this series, when we're done, we have a greater awareness about, one, not only the use of the chokehold, but how we can prevent it. How can we aid someone who is in the midst of being choked out by oppressors? And that way we can do something about it. I was sharing with you before we went on the air that I did speak at, but I was brought in to sing at Faith Congregational this past weekend. Beautiful church, beautiful community. I've first started singing there as a guest soloist back in the early 90s. And so I've watched transitions. And they just happened to be the congregation I was in front of this past weekend. And I've see a cycle, especially in the Hartford area, because where I spent most of my time in different churches, is I see, in my opinion, an illness or a symptom, I should say, where we will find out about injustice. We read scripture about injustice. We'll discuss it. We'll even pray on it, but we won't take action.
But that's a huge problem in this city,
Yes.
and broader community, but specifically in Hartford. I'm sure it happens elsewhere.
Oh, yeah.
But being concerned deeply and discussing is considered the action.
Yes.
Conversation, debate, musing is the action and not the actual doing. So the doing is in, that's what I've referred to as think tankism.
Yes.
They no problem identifying the problem.
Correct.
But we have to change the tires on the flat bus if we want to get somewhere.
That's right.
We know what's wrong. We know how to fix it. What we need is some executive action here.
Right.
And it seems as though that is exactly what you guys have done with the American Justice Project. If somebody wants to, so let's say, give me an example of someone who has been helped by the American Justice Project, other than, of course, yourself.
Yeah.
And how did they find out about you?
I'll give two examples. The first one I spoke briefly about, maybe in the first, if not the second installment, is Gordon Cole Jr. Gordon Cole Jr. was had a dangerous encounter with law enforcement. It was his wife who had reached out to various community leaders. The key thing is all about us being networked. We cannot work in silos. American Justice Project does not work in a silo. We will work with anybody who is serious about justice, standing firm. As my shirt says, we want justice now. So we are not. I don't spend too much time talking about but we are not interested in glorifying ourselves and elevating our profile. So no, we want to help people, and we're serious about that. And we were told, because there is a network of activists in the state, a very healthy one, and we share information, and we all heard about this. And at various points throughout this Cole initiative, there were individuals who stepped up and led rallies and protests at Shelton Police Department. There were individuals who held rallies and co-sponsored an event to raise awareness at the state attorney's office in front of the Milford Court. So we've done that as well too. And then AJP, what we lend to the process is we investigate. We do pretrial investigations. We will screen body cam footage. We will screen documents that are on the record, looking for what should be there, what should not be there, and we're providing what's called a chokehold assessment. So upon the completion of the chokehold assessment, we will work with, perhaps if we have access to a public defender or defense attorney or even a state's attorney, to say, folks, this is the reality of what's going on here, and let's see what happens. In Gordon Cole's case, we were presenting evidence opposing the 12 charges that he was facing, 3 misdemeanors and 9 felonies, all of which were dismissed. Every single one. He's facing 60 years in jail. And had we not continued our part, so it's not enough just to stand on the corner with signs and megaphones and cry out injustice and cry out that his life mattered and his children's lives matter. That's not enough. It takes work. But a village of activists are responsible for his freedom. AJP does not claim full credit for that at all. And that's his situation. So what I'm glad to say, Gordon Cole Jr. spent this Father's Day home with his children, and his children didn't have to sign their name on a list to visit daddy in jail.
Wow. Now, when you say village, it's not the number of people in the village. It's that everyone in the village does different tasks. So it takes everybody doing what they do,
Right,
to accomplish the goal, not just
Exactly.
mass number.
Correct. And unfortunately, we don't have the mass number, and we should,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I believe we all should be in love with justice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think in some cases, more people are in love with gossip than they are justice.
I would agree with you. I use the Gideon example.
Mhm.
You get 32,000, but you only really need 300. So sometimes those extra people can become more of a distraction and an encumbrance. Then, if you have the right people,
Mm-hmm.
which it seems, I mean, you will obviously grow, and you can never have enough hands when the work is burdensome and there are a lot of people. But the effectiveness that you have been able to, employ,
Yes.
is a testimony to the having the right people.
Yes.
At least right now.
And let me be clear on this.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have to burn any cars.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have to throw paint on any storefront windows.
Mm.
We didn't have to break any windows.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have to do any damage. What we had to do is confront the lies with the truth and make sure that the evidence comes forward. As I was telling folks, I was young in this space a couple of years ago. Most of my work happened on a college campus, and that's where I was. It was just so much work. That's where I was. But it was after, again, you go through a transition.
Mm-hmm.
I had to be humbled. I had to suffer in order to bring me to a point where I'm doing the work that I'm doing right now.
Goal.
That's what it is, right? And so again, and even with if I considered us to be a tree of activism,
Mm-hmm.
every now and then you need to do some pruning also, because not all branches will
Bring forth fruit.
bring
Right.
forth fruit, right? And so there can be some rotten apples in the same way that if we talked about the institution of law enforcement, for example, we are not anti-law enforcement. We are anti-oppression and corruption that is within law enforcement. And I would hope to encourage the members, the strong women and men within law enforcement, police yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We as communities shouldn't have to do that.
Right.
Part of you protecting and serving us is by doing your own pruning,
You're right.
right?
Yeah.
Removing your own rotten apples
Mm-hmm.
or whatever that is making your tree, your garden, look bad amongst all of us,
Mm-hmm.
and is getting us sick, physically sick,
Mm-hmm.
emotionally sick.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our law for if everyone kept their house clean, we wouldn't need to be here. But we are here again because we know of how many people have been wrongfully. Well, actually, we don't know the full number of how many people currently right now are wrongfully incarcerated or wrongfully convicted. Not just incarcerated, meaning pretrial detention, but actually convicted. There are thousands, tens of thousands out there. If you look at the statistically, that's the case. Again, over 3,500 people have been exonerated since 1989 alone.
Wow. Wow.
And half of those individuals, half of those cases, more than half of those cases involve police misconduct. So there we go. When I see signs that say, for example, back the blue, I don't have a problem backing good law enforcement. I do have a problem turning a blind eye to close to 55% of wrongful convictions involved police misconduct.
Yeah, that's
significant.
Yeah, it's tragic when organizations, I guess you would expect, you would expect, I guess, human nature for an individual to try to minimize errors and mistakes that they make. The best thing for anybody to do is to just come clean. It's so what? You made a mistake, move on. But when organizations and groups consider pointing out wrong, error, and dealing with it some sort of treasonous act against the organization,
Right.
The corruption is taken root at the top.
Right.
And
as I told, I've been sharing this. I think in some cases, the level of corruption in our state that we have, like, for example, the walls of Jericho,
mm-hmm.
insulating the corruption in this state alone.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many walls of Jericho all around. So I'm just using that as a metaphor. However, this case that we just brought through 6 years, as I was telling people and forecasting, hang in there, let's keep fighting. We have the Trojan horse.
Right.
And we're going to break through these walls, this fortress. And once we're in there, be ready, because it's time to clean house. So in this state, it's time to clean house. We have a victory at the state Supreme Court. And if you look at the ruling very closely, there's a lot of careful wording that was there to protect every judge and prosecutor and member of law enforcement. Everyone within the judicial division has been protected by this ruling. They didn't call it for what it was. So if you look at, for example, the media manipulation, and look at the Hartford News versus the Hartford Courant, you would think you were talking about two different stories.
Yeah.
Because the Hartford News was not afraid to say that this case was a result of a false 911 call. Hartford Courant has never mentioned that element of the story. And it's true.
Well, you know,
the courts. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I was gonna say that, you know, the power of the press is what is the ability to control what doesn't get printed.
Exactly.
And for the Hartford News is putting out the news. They're not. They're not the propaganda voice of those in power.
Right.
And that's you know, most major papers, since they're the official, you know, paper of record,
Yes.
they have the capacity to forever cement in stone the narrative that they want people to look back on in time. And you were mentioning about the court.
Yes.
You know, with the recent issues that they had around the Supreme Court and them coming forth with, you know, transparency on expenditures, which is another subject for another day. But the only reason I point to them is because there's this, I think, a misnomer that American people have, that the court is somehow sacrosanct and above corruption.
Right. Right.
Beyond laughable, because it's an institution of human beings.
Yes.
And, you know, the way our government is set up with the three co-equal branches, it is, you know, legislative branch and executive branch have to do a better job of keeping the judicial branch in check and not look to them as a vehicle to push through things that they want, which ultimately falls on us and comes full circle back to what you guys are doing. It's essential that the American Justice Project succeeds, grows, and becomes something of a force to be reckoned with, because those are the kinds of entities and actions that keep the broader system that puts in place all these processes in check.
Yes.
Because without you, they'll run away with this abuse of power that they've been doing,
as they are accustomed doing.
Yeah.
And again, we have not finished analyzing this ruling completely. We're celebrating the victory, because it is not just, it is what they said. You were wrongfully terminated. And remember, the whole basis of being terminated was the allegation of domestic violence, which they could not substantiate to any degree. Otherwise, they would not be able to put me back to work. There's no way they could. They can't put the blame on the arbitrator, who actually sat down and watched a tearful, Oscar-winning type performance from my accuser, and then looked at the evidence. Even the arbitrator said, wow, his claims of innocence seem to be far-fetched at first. But when you look at the evidence, the evidence completely contradicts her narrative. She is not credible. And he was very nice in that. I wish someone would just tell the truth. She lied. Police rushed to judgment. They discounted this man's skills, his survival skills, his training skills that he had. They don't talk about the fact that my 2 babies were sleeping upstairs when a SWAT team surrounded my home. But I want to get back to your question again regarding other individual. I need to talk about Mervyn Scarlett, because Mervyn Scarlett is someone, you ask, how do people come to me?
Right.
I happen to attend the Village had a men's breakfast. This October will make 2 years ago, I don't believe. And I attended. And there were some other individuals there. A local senator was there. There were individuals from DCF who were there, and other high-ranking officials who were there for placement, I would say, if anything. But the village folks heard what I was doing. The late Don Patterson, who just passed away a couple of months ago, was a warrior for men in this area, but again, unknown because we don't talk about the good news as much as we can. Well, anyway, I was introduced to Mervyn. I was told, I got somebody you have to speak to. And I found out about Mervyn's case. AJP immediately jumped in and performed an analysis. And we got back to his defense attorney and said, this is what you need to bring to the state. There is no crime here. Here's all the evidence, the medical evidence that supports there's no crime here. The background on Mervyn's situation is his fiance had a vaginal delivery of their son. And I believe his birthday is coming up next month. And at birth, this baby's head was almost off the charts in terms of measurements. I believe it's the 97th percentile. Now, it's not completely abnormal or whatever, but it's a big head, right? So, a week later, they measured his head again. It's off the charts. He's a growing baby, okay? A month later, it's even bigger. But no one, for various reasons I can't explain at the moment because I don't know them, but typically I believe because of the dark complexion that they have, people disregarded them, didn't listen to them. Maybe it was the quality of health insurance, I don't know. But the point is, it wasn't until the 4-month checkup of his son that someone said, you know what, we might want to look into this. Why? Because at 4 months, this baby's head was the size of a 27-month-old baby. At 4 months, you got the head of the size of a 2-year-old. Something clearly is wrong. So the parents have been asking for this all along. This wasn't a trip to the ER or urgent care or so forth because something happened. No, this was a routine visit. So they finally decide to do a CAT scan. They find out this baby has a skull fracture.
Oh, my.
A skull fracture that has been just leaking fluid for this entire time, and no one paid attention to it. So this is in November, I believe, of 2021. They immediately take the children. The chokehold is applied, the guilt by accusation. The immediate assumption is that one of these parents did something to cause this skull fracture. They took the next 6 months to investigate, and they couldn't come up with any evidence that this baby was assaulted in any way. None of the signs that you can usually have that will tell this is child abuse. They didn't have it. So what they did was go back to, and all those listeners who may be of Jamaican descent, listen up. During the interview, Mervyn and his fiance reference to the fact that as part of their normal child care for their son is they would perform baby stretches, baby stretching, baby yoga, or so forth. The word yoga was not used, and therefore this is the Vernon Police Department. They didn't know what that meant. So the assumption is baby stretching must be a thuggish thing. And therefore, here's the chokehold. You already took the kids, that's the element of the chokehold, and you kept them for 6 months. There's the time element of the chokehold. And then, because you cannot pin them with any type of child abuse, you use their words, their admission, that instead of just Googling baby stretching and find out what it is, and I challenge folks, please go look up what baby stretching is. You will find across England and other places, you will see folks, European folks performing these tactics. So it's not just something that Jamaicans do, as what is a myth that's out there. They decided to charge Mervyn and his fiance with criminal conduct, risk of injury to a minor, which is a felony in the state, and disorderly conduct for providing routine, generally accepted as good health care that increases mobility and flexibility in infants between the ages of 4 and 6 months, which was the age range of this child. And so we talk about, so that means they were overcharged because they shouldn't have been charged at all. They had to pay a bond. That's excessive bail because they didn't do anything. Police misconduct is involved here. Pre-trial detention, neither of them had to serve time pre-trial, so that doesn't apply. This was never covered in the media, so there was no media manipulation. The financial abuse, yes, they both had to hire attorneys. They both had to pay court fees. Prosecutor misconduct, you know there's no case here. You know there's not. But yet and still, you're going to use these two black individuals as stepping stools to pad your career convictions. These are easy, low-hanging fruit. We talk about Black Lives Matter for a reason. In this case, clearly, to this prosecutor, these two individuals and their children, they took both children away. And they arrested them in May. Took the kids in November. 6 months later, they arrest them. Rather than say, we're sorry, we recognize this is a medical issue, likely to happen, even in the police report, it says. They can't rule out that this skull fracture be given the size of his head and it was a vaginal delivery, that it did not happen. They can't rule out that it did not happen in delivery. Folks, what are we doing here? It's coming upon 3 years that these children have been away from their parents.
Wow.
Continuing with the chokehold, pretrial restrictions. The couple are not allowed to talk to each other. They're both facing felony charges. They're not allowed to communicate. They're parents.
The parents are not allowed to communicate
Correct.
with each other.
While pretrial, right? Family separation is another element. Loss of employment. Mervyn lost his job. Why did he lose his job? Because he was a limo driver. He drove airport shuttles. He had multiple jobs, and he had on his motor vehicle license an F endorsement, which allows him to do delivery service. Vernon Police notified DMV, Department of Motor Vehicle, State of Connecticut, that Mervyn is being charged with risk of injury to a minor and disorderly conduct, and our DMV pre-trial removed his F endorsement. That's punishment, right? This is pre-trial. This is not DUI or DUI. This is not DUI.
Right.
You know,
there's been no trial to determine anything.
But DMV has decided that he is no longer suitable for an F endorsement. And we talk about the presumption of innocence. That does not look like it's not.
It isn't.
The presumption of innocence, right? So he lost his job. Because he lost his job, he ended up getting evicted. He lost his home. Another element of the chokehold. He had to find a home someplace else. So now he resides in Hartford. They did not fit him with a GPS monitor. This is judicial misconduct because the judge has looked at this case and evaluated it, and they're still allowing this case to proceed, even though they know there's no evidence of child abuse here. So this is the Vernon way of processing these kinds of cases. He has not been convicted, so that element is not there. And then it's time. Look at the time that has taken. The mental stress that has been on Mervyn is there. And another thing we do, we're not counselors, but because at least two of the co-founders of AJP have experienced being falsely accused, falsely arrested, maliciously prosecuted, we know what folks go through. Even though their stories are a little different, there are still some of the same mental and physical challenges that we experience. So we know the language, and it's been helpful to our folks. We stay in touch with these folks. We don't just show up for the rally and then leave. We stay in touch with these folks also. And again, this is where, when we talk about coach growing, the coalition, you may not have to take a corner, but if you're a therapist, maybe you will lend your services and speak to some of these individuals. Maybe perhaps you'll you'll donate some of your time and have a session with the individual. Some way that you can cover yourself ethically as well.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a retired judge, maybe you can lend our time, and maybe you can use your connections. I'll throw out a name, Eric Coleman.
Mm-hmm.
Eric Coleman is a retired judge.
Mm-hmm.
He's a former state official and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Eric Coleman can pave a lot of roads to help coach flourish and help us in the chokehold. So someone like Eric, who we know and we've had some communications with in the past, we're hoping that this will spread like wildfire. Now, one of the things I think what may have been holding people back is I still had this dark cloud over my head, right? And you have your critics out there that say, well, AJP is a fraud, or AJP is based off of a lie, or so forth. And now, again, that's why the victory at Supreme Court is so clear, because it should shut every critic up.
Mm-hmm.
It should. We're there. And the court had a chance to do this. I know we talked about the media, but the court, this is published now in the Connecticut Law Journal.
Mm-hmm.
And our justices were very careful not to call out their colleagues and put them to shame for failing to address this case long before it reached the state Supreme Court. Should have never had to do it. But again, me as a believer, knowing that this was God's intentions all along. If we're going to address this once and for all, and if I'm going to give Chris Dukes the strength and the motivation to go through this fiery furnace, to go through these trials, so that way when he is my vessel to get through to this for the sake of the people and the greater good, I'm gonna make sure that it happens at every level. Why just clean the basement when we need to clean the whole house?
The whole house needs to be clean. So the American Justice Project can be like the Innocence Project.
Yes, we have been in communications with our New England Innocence Project, and we have been establishing a relationship for over a year now with them, and recognizing we're not competitors. We're not competing for the same funds. We are complementary. We complement each other.
You're like a left arm and a right arm.
Yes.
Because
they are
not in
addressing
competition with each other. You need both hands.
They're addressing wrongful convictions,
right?
Post conviction,
right?
We're addressing it pre-trial,
right?
And that way, because as they are, if there was no AJP, the Innocence Project, who's doing excellent work, it takes years to get a conviction reversed. Years. Could take decades to get a conviction reversed. While they are working that capacity, people are still coming in the front door of wrongful conviction.
Right.
We are trying to stop this. Every law enforcement official, and I'm going to hold this up, by 2025, every mayor in this country will receive this tool. Every governor will receive this tool. Every bar association that we know of will receive this tool. And what we're doing at the end of by 2025, at the end of 2024, we're going to do an assessment. Who received this? Who responded? Who did not? Because one of our pillars is transparency and accountability. If you can't sign on for this, and you don't care about correcting injustices or preventing injustices, we're going to know who you are. And we want to make sure that we are transparent, and we want to have dialogue with you as why not? This is all in the name of justice.
Justice, transparency, and a tool that can most certainly be used to prevent injustice. We were talking a little bit about the corruption within the judicial system. Pontius Pilate was the judge at Jesus' trial.
Yes.
He knew he was innocent.
Yes, he knew.
I mean, he knew he was innocent.
Yes.
But, hey, for the sake of the system, throw him under the bus. I got better things to do with my time. And so there's this lack of integrity to the truth, and more protecting, quote unquote, the man-made, corrupt, error-ridden system. And with each act of not identifying these individuals within the ranks, it just gets worse. Because, as you mentioned, this is something that could be resolved by the people who are involved if someone just speaks up.
Yes. And we'll give you a quick screenshot, right? Within 48 hours, the state of Connecticut knew that there was no crime committed at my home. They knew. Because by then, they had all the evidence they needed, including the evidence that was fabricated. And we still haven't gotten to an answer of where did that duct tape come from? We know who the contributor of DNA is on it. We know that. They're afraid of that answer because, again, there's a foreign DNA that's there. And I believe with every fiber in my soul, just because I know who's in my house and who's not, it must have been a Hartford police officer. And they didn't want to get to the bottom of that. That's one. But they should have known within 2 days. 48 hours, there's no case here. Yet and still, the malicious prosecution lasted for 566 days. Let's move on to the internal affairs investigation because I wanted to get to the bottom of which officer put DNA there. Why didn't the police do what they were supposed to do? Why did they fabricate reports? Why did they lie in reports? Why did this duct tape evidence get fabricated? That 90-day process, as advertised in their brochure, took over 500 days before Jason Thody signed off on the report. It took 633 days total to reach the Civilian Police Review Board. And then another two other 500 numbers. It took the Supreme Court. I'll give the last one because I hear we're going on. The last one, the Supreme Court, their average was 136 days from the date of oral arguments to give a ruling. Took 557 days to get my ruling. If you read that ruling, it's not a stellar ruling. Why did it take them an extra 400 and some days to come out and spit out the ruling that they gave and wrote it the way they did? Because people were trying to figure out, what are we going to do with this? They knew they had to do the right thing, but they covered. So this is what we're dealing with when we talk about the corruption. The cover-up is always worse than the crime.
Always worse than the crime. Always. Always. It's like, where do you start to clean the house? Yeah.
Well, we hope to network with other like-minded, justice-minded individuals to solve that. This is not a problem just for AJP. Again, this is where Coach is. You don't have to be a believer in Jesus Christ to be a part of it. You do not have to be. You don't have to have a law degree. All you have to do is have a heart and the compassion to fight for justice. And we welcome you. Let's do it.
All right. All right, my friends. Our time together for this special has come to an end. Next week, Chris will be back. We'll be joined by one of our former co-hosts here on the network, Cacique,
yes,
a.k.a. Luis Delgado. And we'll close out this series. If you missed the first two parts of this 4-part series, you can check them out at accesstv.org and get caught up. All right. Chris, thanks for coming in once again.
Thank you again, Sam.
And much continued success.
Thank you.
And whatever we can do, please let us know.
For sure. Thank you so much for allowing us to, one, get this message out, because we're hoping it's not going to just save one person's life, but their entire family. So,
all right.
Thank you.
All right, my friends, that's it. We will see you next time. You go on and have yourself a great rest of your day. Ciao, ciao.